So here I am with Pedro Lillienfeld here in his beautiful house in Lexington, Massachusetts. And his story and the story of his family is what I would call a hero's journey. Even if he doesn't consider himself a hero, it follows the narrative of what's considered a classic hero's journey. And the story is as long and complicated as Jewish history itself. So I would like him to say just one sentence in each of the numbers of languages that he knows, in the sentence, in the language of that place. And I believe it starts with Spain. And he can do it in chronological order.
Nací en España, en Madrid, hace muchos años, y me eduqué en el Ecuador. Pasé 16 años en el Ecuador. Meine Eltern sind von Deutschland ausgewandert in 1933 nach Spanien. Nach Spanien sind wir geflüchtet vom Zivilkrieg and we went to France. Je suis arrivé en France quand j'avais 2 ans. Et je suis allé à l'école française dans le petit endroit en dessous de France, que c'était 7, où j'étais dans l'école primaire. And so now I'm going back to English, and I will give a general idea of what happened to me in my youth.
And let me just say, we're going to start with France, I believe.
Well,
no.
I will give a very quick background.
Okay.
My parents
Yeah.
were from Germany.
Okay.
And my father was an engineer, an electrical engineer. My mother went to a translation school. Mm-hmm. And my father was employed in a electronics firm in Berlin in 1933 when Hitler took over. And as a result of that, he had the opportunity to immigrate to Spain as he lost his job in Berlin as a result of the Nazis taking over. And I was born in Spain in 1934, a year after their arrival. In 1936, however, the Spanish Civil War broke out, and my family and I were on the run again. And we made our first attempt to come to the United States, which was not successful. And we decided to emigrate from Spain to France because my father's mother lived in Paris.
And so, the refusal for the first visa that you attempted to the United States from Spain.
Yes.
Yeah, we've talked about the attitudes of the State Department in the United States at that time.
Right. There was a functionary called Breckinridge Long in the State Department of the United States, and that was definitely anti-Semitic and blocked the access of Jews to the United States throughout the 30s and early 40s.
You mean he denied?
Yes.
He denied the...
Yes.
He denied it, yeah. Yeah.
And so we ended up in Paris in 1936, and everything seemed fine, except that 3 years later, World War II broke out, And we happened to be in a resort town on the Atlantic coast, spending some time during the summer. And immediately our whole style of lifestyle broke down. My father, as a able-bodied man in the right age, was interned by the French authorities as being a German. They made no distinction between being Jewish or non-Jewish. They considered a German citizen at that point as a potential enemy.
So it's being suspect. He was suspect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the non-able-bodied males were constrained to go to a small town in Brittany. And so my mother, her parents, and I went to the town of Chateaubriand, which in retrospect probably saved our lives, because had we been able to return to Paris, to our home, we could have eventually been rounded up by the Nazis when they took over. So we were in that little French town of Chateaubriand, and were unable to leave from there because the French authorities were very strict about that. And several months passed, which was the period that is now called the Phony War between Germany and France and Britain on the other side.
What do they call it then?
That is called the Phony War because not much was happening.
Okay.
War had been declared by France and England against Germany when Germany invaded Poland.
Right.
And that happened in September of 1939.
Right. That's right.
And for many months, there were no hostilities, and that was called the Phony War until May of 1940, when suddenly the German Blitzkrieg, which was the lightning warfare, was initiated, and the invasion of Holland, Belgium, and France took place.
Oh, all at the same time? All three countries?
Yes, they were being, overrun at the same time. And within weeks, basically, the French defenses collapsed, and the Germans marched through Paris and eventually rolled westward, and we were suddenly under German occupation. The German forces rolled through the little town of Chateaubriand where we were, and I can still remember viewing the tanks, landing craft, and other military vehicles rolling through town. And we knew that there would be German soldiers that would be billeted to the houses in the little town. The French, most of the French population of the town had fled south, but we were unable to move from there because of the strict control that the French had been exerting.
And it was control of Germans, French who were born in Germany.
Yes.
Yeah. Not specifically German Jews. Not specifically.
Nothing to do with Jews.
Yeah.
This had to be, if you were of German extraction, that was sufficient.
Sufficient, yeah. Do you think before Germany invaded and occupied France, that most French people predicted that it was coming, anticipated?
No, they were hoping that the French army would be able to resist the Germans, and when this didn't happen, then they fled south, of course, from the town and from the surrounding region.
But the French army, they thought, would be able to hold off?
Yes, and that obviously did not prove to be the case.
Right, yeah.
And so we were sitting in the living room while the German forces were rolling through. And suddenly the knock at the door occurred. And my grandfather, the man of the house at that moment, went to the door, opened it, and there were two German soldiers with all their gear, motorcycle, machine guns, etc., trying to tell us in broken French that they wanted to stay in
Your house.
in the house.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you at
They
that time?
were assuming, of course, that we were local French.
Yeah.
And so
And how old were you at that time?
I was 6 years old.
Do you remember being frightened, or you remember?
I was not particularly frightened because I wasn't aware of the danger.
Okay.
And it was my mother and her parents who were the ones who were afraid, of course.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather took a great gamble, which at first sight would seem suicidal, but may have also saved our lives, in that he answered the German soldiers in perfect German, of course,
Right.
that wir sind Juden. We are Jews. And the response of the two young German soldiers was totally surprising. They clicked their heels in unison and asked my grandfather whether he belonged to two Jewish families, Wertheim and Tietz, and that they would be interested to know whether we were part of those families.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather answered, no, we have nothing to do with them. These two families were the owners at the time of the largest department stores in Berlin, and the Nazi authorities had a great interest in capturing them. So the German soldiers then said, no, if you are Jewish, this is a matter for the Gestapo. We have nothing to do with that. Can we come in? And so we were, of course, obliged to do so, to accept that.
Right.
And
Well, if you guys had said you were part of one of those two families, what do you think what was?
then they would have taken us
To the Gestapo.
away and
Yeah.
handed it over to the Gestapo.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the two soldiers installed themselves in our house, and they were perfectly nice.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was totally mesmerized by their equipment. They
Of
were
course.
constantly cleaning their machine guns and their motorcycle and other equipment.
Right.
And to our utter embarrassment, they actually gave us several boxes of candies,
Right.
large boxes that they had captured from the British at the retreat at Dunkirk.
Oh, wow. So it was after Dunkirk.
Yes,
This was after Dunkirk.
right after Dunkirk.
And they you must have been mesmerized. And were you felt friendly to them, I
Oh,
guess?
yes, I had no problems with it.
Okay.
My mother, however, took to heart this statement that the Gestapo would be interested in us,
Yeah. Right.
and proceeded to do something very smart. She volunteered to the mayor of the town of Chateaubriand, the French mayor, as a translator, because obviously he had to deal with the German occupying forces. And so she acted as a translator, and the mayor was very grateful for that.
Right.
And also informed her about the situation in France. At that moment, the armistice had been taking place,
Okay.
and the division of the country into the two zones
Right.
had been established. In the north, where we were, was the direct occupation by the German forces, and the south was under the puppet regime of Pétain,
Right.
with the capital of Vichy.
Right.
So this was called the Vichy zone.
Yeah. And even though it was a puppet government to the French, I mean to the Germans, from what I remember you saying, it was still safe for Jews in that area.
It was safe for Jews for the time being.
For the time being.
In the immediate aftermath of the
Armistice.
Armistice.
Right. How long did the armistice last?
What's that?
How long did the armistice last? Till the end of the war?
Well, the armistice lasted until the end of the war.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So my mother decided that we had to escape because we were under German occupation. The soldiers would move on because they had plans for the invasion of Britain. In fact, the two soldiers told us that the plans were that within weeks the German forces would land in Britain, and that they expected that again within weeks
To take over London.
Britain would collapse just as France did. And they were totally convinced of that, and they were almost robotic in their
Excitement.
acceptance of that, plan.
Right. So wait a minute. Your mother, though, knew French and German as well. I mean, equally.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
So what we did as soon as the German forces moved out of town, we packed up as little as possible. And at that point, of course, we were free to move in France because the constraints that the French government had established before the collapse were now not
In effect.
they were no longer being enforced.
Yeah.
And so we took the train to Bordeaux.
Right.
Bordeaux was the last big city that was still under direct German occupation,
Okay.
and was not very far from the border
With Vichy.
with the Vichy zone, which was the only direction in which we could escape from the German occupation.
What, headed south, you mean?
Heading south.
Well, look at the paradoxes. There's a lot of paradox, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's all paradox. That the North, which was, I guess, anti-Nazi, right, before the war, or before they occupied.
Well, the French were being, totally subjugated to
Right.
the German
Right,
forces.
but before the invasion, before the occupation, they would have been less pro-German than the Vichy, right? Were the Vichy...
No, that had nothing to do with it. This was a new situation,
Okay.
totally new.
Okay.
So, my mother, when we arrived in Bordeaux, decided to basically walk around the city and try to determine whether there was a bus line that was still going across the border to the Vichy zone
Right.
that would be least conspicuous in terms of carrying French peasants and their wares, and would be least likely to be controlled by the German authorities.
Okay.
And so after several days of staying in Bordeaux, my mother thought she had found that kind of a bus line. We embarked on that bus with the minimum of luggage because we didn't want to stand out. And there we were among French peasants with their wares, with their fruits and vegetables and chickens and so forth.
Yep.
And we were obviously the only non-French in that bus.
Yeah.
So
and was your father with you?
What's that?
Was your father?
No. I will talk about my father separately.
Yeah, that's okay. But your grandparents were with you? No.
My father had been interned by the French to a internment camp for able-bodied people of German extraction, and I will address that which he underwent.
But your grandparents were with you?
Yes, my grandparents, my mother's parents, that is, and my mother and I.
Okay.
The four of us. So we get to the border, which was very much controlled. There was a barrier there. 2 German guards, probably SS guards, and they stopped the bus and proceeded to walk around it very carefully, looking in. This was summertime, and of course the windows of the bus were open, and they very carefully looked at everybody who was sitting in that bus. My parents, of course, were paralyzed. My mother, I should say, and her parents were paralyzed with fear at that point because they knew that this could spell disaster. Yeah. And after a few minutes of careful observation, the German guards gathered together on one side of the bus, very close to where we were sitting. And of course, in German, one of them said to the other, "Oh, I bet there are some dirty Jews there. I can see them. What should we do?" And so for the next 10 seconds or 15 seconds or so, our lives hung from a very thin thread. And after those 10, 15 seconds, the other guard said, "Oh, I'm tired, it's late, I'm fed up, just let the pigs go." And so we were able to continue with the bus. Otherwise, if they had been less lackadaisical, well, I wouldn't be sitting here with you and giving you this interview. So we continued south, and to make the story short, we ended up in the little town on the Mediterranean coast in France called Sète, S-E-T-E. And we joined my father there. Mm-hmm. And I'm now going to describe what happened to my father.
Yes.
My father, as I indicated, by the French authorities on when the war broke out in September of '39, interned him. And he went from one internment camp to another, and with very limited conditions, very little food, but still, not under direct danger of losing his life.
Right.
And eventually, of course, when the Germans overran France, the commander of the camp ordered the entire population of inmates to march in the western direction, away from the Germans, mm-hmm. trying to escape their advance. While they were still within sight of the camp where they had been interned, they saw that Germans Air Force,
Force.
was attacking that camp, and it went up in flames. And they
Just after they got out.
and they had just gotten out. They were about 2 or 3 miles away from it.
Yeah.
And so they were marching and marching. And what happened is that there were some elder or sick people among them. And the French guards who were with them were getting drunk because they couldn't, deal with the situation.
Right.
And started to bayonet those poor people who couldn't march and continue west, and kill them on the spot. And this was a horrific spectacle, but there was nothing that my father could do. He just had to continue. He, of course, was a very good physical shape, and marched for about 50 miles until they reached a major town, Rouen, in northwestern France, in the middle of the night. And the whole group of inmates decided that the only way to save themselves from the Germans would be to commandeer a train. Mm-hmm. And so at gunpoint, they didn't have a gun, but on knife point, they compelled a train driver that they found to put together a freight train, jumped on it, and ordered the conductor to travel south as fast as the train could go. Mm-hmm. And so there was this whole group of inmates on the train. They were unable to see out because this was a freight train, didn't have any windows. And when they were maybe 100 miles south of where they had started, they started to hear airplanes flying over, and this was the German Air Force that saw this train going at high speed, and that, of course, raised their attention, and they started to strive to bombard the train. 2 of the cars blew up, fortunately not the one in which my father was riding. And finally, they got away towards the south of France and ended up in the same little town of Sète where we went eventually.
Right. You guys were there.
We were able to communicate, however, through my grandmother in Paris, which so that we knew where we were, and my father would know where we were, and was able to join us.
And that was in Sète.
In Sète.
Yeah.
And by then, of course, the armistice had been signed, and the division of France had been carried out, and we were all in the Vichy zone in the town of Sète. I went to first grade there, and it was a public school, primary public school in the town of Sète, and I was most probably the only Jew in the class. Mm-hmm. I have a picture of the class. There were about 42 or 43 little boys of my age of 6.
Yeah.
And there was this incredible happening to me. We are now at the end of 1940, and 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas of 1940, the teacher at the school told all the students in that first grade to draw the nicest drawing that they could do, and that it would be a competition and should hand in the drawing to the teacher. We did that. I remember the little drawing that I made. It was just a kind of a view of the port of Set with its lighthouse and little ships and whatever, and handed it in. About a month later, the teacher gets up and in the class and announces, I have the honor of announcing that one of our boys has won the competition for first graders in the south of France. And it's the little boy here, Pedro Lillienfeld. Pierre, because my name Pedro had been Gallicized, had been made French. And he hands me this envelope, which had a seal from the state, from the Vichy state.
Oh, right.
And so when I took it home, my parents were frightened because they thought it was a summons of some sort. But when they opened it, they discovered it was a personal letter from Marshal Pétain, the president of the Vichy government. A personal letter to me congratulating me for the drawing that I had made and wishing that I continue on doing this, which is apparently I have talent for.
Right.
And so here we have Marshal Pétain, while he was issuing edicts against the Jews, congratulating this little boy of Jewish descent for what he did as a little drawing.
Right.
Things were, however, not so rosy. My father was denounced as a Jew and taken away by the French Vichy authorities and put again into a internment camp in the south of France.
How did he get denounced? What was that about? How was that organized? Him being denounced as a Jew?
Well, it was that obviously people wanted to ingratiate themselves with the Vichy government and the Germans, okay, who were indirectly controlling that whole region. And so by denouncing people of Jewish extraction, they thought that they were,
heroes or something. Well, that they would be rewarded.
They would be rewarded.
Yeah.
And so he was taken away. And not only that, but my mother fell almost deathly sick. She ate some contaminated shellfish.
Oh, right.
There was very little to eat, by the way. I was totally undernourished and with pustules all over my body that were as a result of this undernourishment. And so for a while I was taken care of by a lady, another Jewish lady who had also taken refuge in that town. My grandparents were not able to take care of me, and my mother was, of course, in the hospital and barely surviving. Mm-hmm. My father in the internment camp.
Yeah.
And so my father, just before he was interned again, had sent a letter to his erstwhile boss in Madrid, where he had worked during, before the Civil War, asking him with desperation to provide us with visas to re-enter Spain, to escape France.
Yeah.
And he didn't expect that this would even arrive in Madrid, this letter, but this was a kind of last resort attempt. And so he is in the camp, and one day the commander calls him in and asks, "Are you Mr. Lillienfeld?" "Yes." I have visas for you that have arrived from Spain. You're free to
leave.
to leave.
Yeah.
And so he came and picked up my mother from the hospital. She was just about beginning to recover, and the rest of us, and we returned to Spain.
To Spain. And what part in Spain? Where
To
in Spain?
Madrid.
To Madrid.
Back to Madrid.
So all
Now,
those.
what
Yeah.
I didn't mention, and I'm retracing myself,
That's okay.
is that when he was first put into an internment camp by the French before the Germans ran over France,
Yeah.
he had volunteered previously for the French army, seeing the writing on the wall with respect to Germans.
Right.
But the French, of course, did not know what to do with a German citizen who was volunteering for the French army.
Yeah.
But while he was at that French internment camp during the Phony War,
Yeah.
the commander called him in and said, you are a French soldier. You shouldn't be an inmate here. So made him a guard right in front of, the others,
Yeah.
and said, you are now a guard.
Yeah.
A week later, the commander calls him in and says, by the way, you are a highly trained engineer. We can use you better than as a guard.
Right. Yeah.
And he was assigned to work as a designer in a secret submarine factory on the city of Le Havre, which was on the coast of France.
And on the coast close to England?
Yes.
Okay.
And so he ended up in this secret submarine factory working for the French. However, as soon as the Germans did attack in May of 1940, the submarine factory closed,
Right.
and they put him back into an internment camp because they didn't know what to do with him.
And the French put him into?
Yes, that was just before the Germans overrun the country.
Okay. Wow.
So we are back in Madrid, okay?
Yeah. And waiting for him, or hoping for him.
No, we are now all together
Okay.
in Madrid.
Okay.
My father goes right back to the job that he had before he left before the Civil War.
Yeah. The electrical engineering.
But
Electrical engineering.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem was that this is 1941, and the regime in Spain under Franco was potentially too friendly with the German forces.
Right.
He was very cozy with Hitler, and so as long as Germany seemed to be winning the war, there was the potential that Spain would go into the war on the side of the Germans.
And join the Axis.
Yes,
Yeah.
join the Axis. And that was, of course, very dangerous for us.
Right.
And so my father again ran to the American embassy in Madrid, pleading to let us immigrate to the United States. And time and again he was rejected. Nothing to do. We could not come to the United States. So under these circumstances, my family decided we will emigrate, we will leave Spain, because Spain is not necessarily safe,
Right.
and go any place in the world as long as it is away from Europe. And somebody mentioned Ecuador, and we didn't even know where it was.
Right.
And we applied for a visa to go to Ecuador, and which was granted.
Right.
Ecuador was one of the very few countries that accepted immigrants from Europe at the time. I think the only other country was Paraguay.
Okay.
So we ended up on a ship traveling from Spain to Ecuador.
Yeah, Ecuador.
It took us over 3 months to travel from Spain to Ecuador because we could not go through the Panama Canal, which was closed to commercial navigation during the war.
Yeah.
And the ship had to go to Buenos Aires,
Oh, and all the way around.
where we disembarked. And even there, we were not allowed to disembark immediately because we didn't have the transit visa.
Yeah.
Eventually, we were able to get it. We crossed Argentina, over the Andes into Chile, and took another ship from Valparaiso up the coast, the western coast of South America, up to Guayaquil in Ecuador.
Yeah.
And from there, we reached Quito. And when my mother tucked me into bed that first night in Quito, I asked her, when are we leaving? Because I was used to
Leaving. Yeah.
leaving.
And how old were you at that point?
And I was 8 years old.
Okay. Right.
And I lived in Ecuador for 16 years.
Okay.
So that's the story.
Yeah. And she said, we don't know if we're leaving. Or what did
That's
she
right.
say? Yeah.
Because she didn't know. She was hoping that we didn't have to leave.
Right. Right. And you were in Quito.
Yeah, in
And
Quito.
Quito. Yeah.
And
What do you remember about that?
oh, I remember everything.
Okay.
And I went to third grade when I arrived there, and went to primary school, secondary school, and engineering school, all in Quito.
Wow. Well, what do you think, what wisdom have you gained? It must be a lot about human nature, about history, about the situation of Jewish history, about fears of democracy being destroyed, about the trust or not distrust of people, any of those kinds of philosophical things.
Well, I actually wrote a little essay, very short,
Good.
that I can
Oh, no, that'd be great.
read to you,
Okay.
which may address those questions that
Okay.
you just raised.
Okay.
What am I? My unorthodox name stems from my peripatetic life. I was born in Spain of German secular Jewish parents. My given name morphed several times from Pedro to Peterline and Peter to Pierre and back to Pedro as my family trekked from country to country and from continent to continent. Last but not least, I'm asked sometimes whether I feel any allegiance to a specific country. Do I feel American or Ecuadorian or Spanish or German or whatever? My answer is none. I'm an American citizen, but I don't really feel American. I'm thoroughly grateful to Ecuador for having received us with open arms when we needed it, and other countries were barred to us. But I do not feel Ecuadorian. I was born in Spain, but I cannot classify myself as a genuine Spaniard. My mother tongue, if I have any, is probably German, but I do not feel any allegiance to Germany. My schooling started in French, but I am not a Frenchman. I feel deep affinity to the Spanish language and culture, but the language in which I write is preferentially English. A possible but imperfect identification that I can come up with, perhaps, is that I am a deracinated Western European of Ashkenazi descent.
I like that one. And explain deracinated. I mean, I know the word, but...
Deracinated means uprooted.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, My personal view with respect to any feelings of nostalgia engendered by the diaspora that my family underwent, starting with Hitler's takeover in 1933, is that I do not harbor such emotions. As I mentioned above, I do not have any sentiment of allegiance to any country, religious denomination, ethnic grouping, or any other entity that would differentiate me from humanity at large. My life's experiences has conditioned me to be a cosmopolitan being who, while fully acknowledging my Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, precludes any distinction from my fellow Homo sapiens based on that ethnicity. These life experiences has made me at home wherever I have decided to be and would decide to reside. I do not feel deracinated from any specific country or culture and tend to create my own, essentially self-contained environment, largely shaped to my personal preferences, ideology, and lifestyle. All of the above, however, does not imply that I would acquiesce to be surrounded by others who embrace principles and ideas that are alien to what I hold dear. So this is,
No, I get it.
essence of what I
Yeah.
say on the subject.
But what about to read that last line? Because that relates, of course, to what we're dealing with right now in the United States, I believe.
Yes. Now, I have comments about the United States. That's
Good.
another issue.
We'll accept those.
Do you want to hear those?
Well, let me talk to me about, yes, but talk to me about that last sentence.
Okay.
How you would interpret that.
That I indicated that I would feel comfortable in any environment
Right.
that I choose. But I would choose not to live in a situation that is counter to my principles and ideals. In other words, for example, I could not see myself living in most of the southern part of this country because of the way the people think there. I'm comfortable here in Massachusetts and grateful that this is a state that is perhaps an oasis of sanity in a country which right now does not characterize itself for a predominant sanity.
Right, right. No, I understand.
That's to
And that's what-
clarify my...
Yeah, I assumed that that's what you meant.
Yeah.
But I wanted everyone to hear
Yeah.
that. Let me hear about the U.S. And what if I was to take what you said as a whole, which I totally understand, is really it's an existentialist point of view, isn't it? Were you very much influenced by French existentialism or German existentialism or that philosophy in general?
No. I'm not. I tend to disregard philosophy.
Okay,
I'm a scientist
right.
and I'm a rationalist. And I find that philosophy very often digresses into areas that I find unsatisfactory
Okay,
and that do not agree with my scientific view of the world and of humanity. And so I am an atheist,
right.
and
But most existentialists are.
which you could consider as a philosophical position to be in.
Yeah,
And I've been that way since I'm a teenager.
right,
It goes way back.
right.
And I remember how I started out. I was 14 years old, and I had a friend who just had arrived in Ecuador and joined me in my school. And he had been saved by the Kindertransport.
Yeah. To describe, I know what it is.
The
But
Kindertransport was a operation that took place just before the start of the war, where about 10,000 children from Eastern Europe, especially Czechoslovakia and so forth, were taken to countries in Britain and Scandinavia to save them from the persecution of the Nazis. And the children survived, but their parents in general didn't.
right.
So I conversed with this young friend of mine at the age of 14, and he expressed the view that he was an atheist.
Right.
And I was surprised. At the time, I had not thought about it much. And he said, I cannot believe in a God that allowed my parents to be killed.
Right.
And so I started to think about that from that time on, and converged on that belief or lack of belief very quickly. There's this famous statement by Primo Levi. I don't know if
Oh, I know who he is. Yeah.
Primo Levi was a Holocaust survivor of Jewish Italian extraction, who wrote some very interesting, brilliant books after the war. He was a survivor because he was a chemist, and Germans made use of his capabilities.
Right.
But he witnessed Auschwitz in all its horror and made the statement, "There was Auschwitz, there cannot be God."
Yeah.
And I, took that very much to heart. Okay. Now, if you want to hear about
Sure.
my view of America,
Contemporary, I think.
yes,
Okay.
What has happened to these United States in the last decade or so has gotten me to reflect on how I feel about this country of adoption. Adoption has gone both ways. I have become part of it, and it has perhaps attempted to adopt me. Neither has become completely fulfilled, notwithstanding that I lived here for over 65 years. When I grew up in my previous country of adoption, Ecuador, a minor, largely underdeveloped, relatively peaceful enclave in northwest South America, I viewed the US with a certain derision. My image of that imposing country to the north was tinged by negative impressions. I have painted some of these in my autobiography. My encounters with Americans in Quito were invariably fraught. Drunken and boorish diplomatic attachés, evangelizing desiccated women, dismissive U.S. embassy functionaries. My impressions about this country were degraded even further by McCarthyism, the shameless propagandistic tone of the Voice of America transmissions, and last but not least, by my growing intellectual awareness of the potential dire consequences of the repeated rejections by American consular offices of our desperate pleas to immigrate amidst our life-threatening perils in World War II Europe. So it was with a certain reluctance and with misgivings that I decided to transplant myself, although mostly temporarily, to New York City, enrolling at Columbia University for graduate studies. I still intended to eventually return to Ecuador. My experience at Columbia did little or nothing to improve my impressions. I found that I could only relate to a few foreign students, a Jamaican, and 2 Englishmen. My exposure to a pamphlet issued by the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, ignoring pre-Mayflower America, the chauvinistic religiosity of my immigration officer, and the surprising support for the Vietnam War by engineering colleagues at my initial employer, only confirmed my contempt for what this country represented. As I've mentioned, I would have eventually returned to Ecuador, and my friends there, were it not for having fallen in love with another adopted American, Evelyn. We had in common that she, too, ill-fitted the United States, and all her friends to whom she introduced me were foreign students. My first electoral participation was in 1964, Johnson versus Goldwater. I disliked the former because of his stance in the Vietnam War, but the latter was simply abhorrent. Nuked them all. Subsequent presidential elections were very disappointing. Nixon, Reagan, and eventually the Bushes. The nadir was reached with Trump. When the latter's candidacy was first mentioned in 2015, I was actually elated because I firmly believed that his participation would ensure the sinking of what I viewed as the despicable Republican Party. Notwithstanding, and partly through the absurdity of the Electoral College system, he was enthroned. Trump's ascendancy, however, has proven to be far more than a mere passing folly. It is unfortunately a symptom of a deep rot in American society. A rot has grown over the years and did not originate with Trump. He is merely the crowning manifestation and distillation of a widespread intellectual pathology in this country. And what is the main cause of that deviant mentality? In my view, it is the inevitable result of a woeful, deficient system of education. It is a system that at best is uneven and at worst disastrous. Education is often under the control of people who themselves are insufficiently educated, driven by extremist and irrational views and religious dogmatism. These educational shortcomings created fertile grounds for the proliferation of fanaticism, intolerance, conspiratorial thinking, distrust in science, acceptance of authoritarianism, through ignorance of history, patriotic chauvinism, xenophobia, racism, misogyny, etc., etc. This is the toxic brew on which Trumpism feeds. It would be unpalatable already if this cult-like cohort were to be restricted to what we now call Trump's base, that is, some 30% of the electoral body. But the reality is that we now seem to have to contend with about 50% or so of the electoral body. To me, this means that one half of Americans are intellectually rotten, a veritable disaster, a horrifying conclusion. I'm writing this piece 3 weeks before the 2024 presidential elections. I fervently hope that the Harris-Walz ticket wins. The alternative is worse than dire. However, I've come to the depressing inference that even if the Democratic ticket prevails, my views about the deep-rottedness of this country remains unaltered. There will still remain that 50% which so aptly Hillary Clinton had labeled as deplorables. In this context, I need to address a related observation. When listening to and reading the copious comments and statements by politicians, political leaders, pundits, editorial writers, etc., I have identified a common denominator, a systematic denial of my above-stated conclusion that this country is permeated by a moral and intellectual rot. Case in point, on October 18, 2024, with the presidential election around the corner, I listened to an interview by Margaret Hoover of NPR of the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. However, Hoover is incisive in her questioning, and she asked her interviewee why he thought the expected results of the election were so much in doubt in his crucially important state, given Trump's unending production of nonsense, lies, distortions, criminal behavior, etc. Shapiro's response was, as expected, totally evasive. Hoover's question has been asked repeatedly, but to my knowledge, nobody has dared to respond with the truth. In fact, an honest answer would be nearly unthinkable. It could have dire consequences for its author. To be fair, the US is not alone in the world of 2024 in being infected with fascist and authoritarian tendencies. The list of countries with highly questionable regimes is of course well known. Here are just a few: Russia, China, Iran, Hungary, Turkey, Belarus, Egypt, etc. However, I believe what would distinguish America from that coterie, if Trump were to be enthroned again, is the absurd, solipsistic pretension of this country of being the paragon of freedom, of democracy, of equal rights, the city upon a hill, the beacon of hope, the shining example for the world to emulate. Do I want to remain in such a country? If I were a bit younger, I would seriously consider decamping to a more, in quotes, civilized abode. Age and family, however, preclude such drastic move. I will be forced to grit my teeth for the foreseeable future, which in my case may not last that much longer anyway. Note added the morning after the 2024 elections. Disaster has struck. Trump has comfortably won the presidential election. The Senate will have a Republican majority and the House may follow. Trumpism will be unchecked and unrestrained. My dark assessment of the rot that permeates this country is now enshrined. If anything, this putrefaction is deeper and wider than what I had implied in my writing above. The enthroning of Trump in 2016 could be attributed in part to an insufficient understanding of his defects. No such excuses can be proffered today. The people of this country are either fully aware of the miscreant they have elected or are in denial. Either constitutes an indictment of the majority of Americans. My final assessment is that those of us who are horrified by this development must now face the fact that we are surrounded by no fewer than 77 million morons. I have dreamed after so many years having to live in a country of which I never dreamed after so many years having to live in a country of which I feel so alienated. The only silver lining is that my family and I live in New England, one of the few islands of sanity in a swamp of irrationality. It brings up one of my unorthodox opinions. Abraham Lincoln's greatest mistake was to fight for the preservation of the Union. That Union is now being dragged down into the cesspool by the Southern Confederacy states, joined by several similarly contaminated states.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So where have you read that statement to? To whom have you read that statement?
I have read this to one of my neighbors who was totally outraged. He said, "What are you doing here? You should leave."
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he said that.
Right.
But I have read it to other people and they have understood what I'm all about.
Right. Have you read it in a public setting?
No.
Okay.
I'm not suicidal.
Yeah.
No, you see, what makes me so uneasy about the present situation
Yes.
is that I see too many similarities
Right.
with what happened in Germany
in the 30s.
early 1930s.
Yeah.
Okay, and that similarity is very disturbing, and it is something that I'm taking to heart,
Right.
and I hope that we will survive this present administration.
Right.
But I'm very pessimistic about what will happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Right. Well, when you said the thing about Abraham Lincoln, I didn't quite get the quote
Well,
of Abraham Lincoln.
my point was that by forcing the Union to exist, in other words, by incorporating the southern states in the Union,
Okay.
we are basically he did a disservice to the country. If the Union would have split at that point, I would say good riddance to the Southern Confederacy.
Well, he had to defeat the Confederacy because it was like an insurrection.
Yeah.
They had to defeat that.
Well, but,
Yeah.
you see my point.
Yes, I do. Wow. Johannes, do you have any questions? He has plenty of questions.
I'm sure he does.
At least in cities like Miami, or my son is studying in University of Florida, but there is a lot of awareness, there is a lot of new generations that they bring some hope, and the new generation, especially in cities like Miami, Orlando,
Right.
but also Atlanta, in the South.
In the South, yeah.
But yeah, it's a fight that we need to. It's a war that we need to fight.
Yeah. We've been most concerned about the immigration issue.
Yes.
Wow.
This is a serious matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can identify with that.
Oh, yeah,
My God.
because we were rejected by this
That's
country.
right. Yeah.
And, I see a repetition of this to some extent.
Right. I do too.
It's not based on anti-Semitism,
Right.
but based on anti-Latin,
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole idea of, of choosing a group to blame.
Yeah.
The whole idea of blaming, blaming
well,
a
it's
particular
a
group.
racist thing.
Yeah.
It's basically racist.
Right.
When you hear that he will accept, Trump will only accept the white people from South Africa
And Norway.
and
Right. Right.
other parts.
Right. Yeah.
That's purely racist.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate to some extent that in this country, the impression that many people have about Latin American culture is tinged by the people who come here who are desperate.
Yeah.
And so they think that the whole of Latin America is like that.
Right.
They don't appreciate the culture that exists in Latin America.
Well, also that they've brought here. I mean, that Latin Americans have brought here to the States.
Yeah.
I mean, wonderful stuff.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. It's not only that poor people have come, but also, yeah. But, but it's the whole thing of scapegoating. That's the word I was looking for. People can be very, very turned on or easily, fooled, easily convinced, easily changed by a scapegoating idea. And then also the conspiracy thing.
Of course.
The conspiracy theories are really, beyond irrational. They're like absurd, just absurd. Well, we can go look at some of your stuff, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we have a map of Germany, and my parents came from two different parts of it. My father came from the Saarland, which is a small region adjacent to France, and my mother came from Berlin. And they met in Berlin while my father was studying engineering there. And so this is where my family started. This was the house in Paris, where my grandmother, the mother of my father, lived. And she was married in second marriage to a French musician, which I have not mentioned.
No, you haven't.
And this French musician became the principal conductor at the Paris Opera. And so...
While during the time where you guys were there, or later?
no, this was... He became a conductor before we got there.
Okay.
And then continued after, during the war and after.
He did? Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And this is another story which is worth mentioning. My grandmother, obviously, who was living there in Paris, was of Jewish extraction.
Yeah.
And when the Germans conquered France and overran Paris, she decided that she was not going to leave her house as long as the Germans were occupying Paris.
Paris, yeah.
So for 4 years...
Oh, she just stayed in?
She never left the house because she refused to wear the yellow star.
Yeah.
And...
Was he Jewish too, her husband?
He was Jewish.
No, her husband.
Her
husband?
Her husband, her second husband was French. He was not
Jewish, yeah.
And so my step-grandfather, the French conductor of the Paris Opera, while the Germans were occupying Paris, received a personal invitation from Adolf Hitler to come with the whole cast of the Paris Opera to perform in his presence in Berlin. And the invitation specifically indicated Monsieur and Madame. That means he and his wife.
Yep.
And that, of course, was extremely dangerous.
Of course.
Because everybody who would be appearing in the presence of Hitler was going to be investigated in great detail.
Yes.
And so he managed, my step-grandfather, the conductor, managed to delay and delay and delay. He said, this singer is sick and that is that. And until the bombardments of Berlin were too intense and the whole thing was canceled and they were saved. But it was a dangerous situation.
Oh, yeah.
But she lived for 4 years in that house.
In that house. Well, it's a beautiful house.
It's a beautiful house. It's in a suburb of Paris.
Yeah.
And as a child, I lived there for a while.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
This is a map of France.
Mm-hmm.
And this shows the division between the two zones. Mm-hmm. This part was occupied by the German forces, and the yellow part is the part which was the puppet regime of Pétain.
Is that why they didn't occupy it? Is that why they didn't occupy it? Because they had sort of allies there?
The reason why they divided, the Germans divided France this way is that they wanted to concentrate all their forces to face Britain.
Yeah.
So that they would invade.
Right. Okay. Right.
Where we stayed.
Wow.
So we were living in Paris, but we were spending time on the coast here when World War II broke out. And so immediately we were forced to go to Chateaubriand, which was here.
Right.
And my father was in various camps, among them Lisieux.
Wow. Is Chateaubriand famous for wine or food, something?
No. What you are referring to is Chateaubriand with a D at the end, and that's a particular cut of meat.
Meat, yeah. Okay, so I'm pretty close. Yeah. Okay.
And so we were forced, my mother, my grandparents, and I, to stay in Chateaubriand.
Yeah.
And then eventually, once the Germans had occupied this and, of course, divided the country in this fashion,
Right.
we decided we had to get out of this occupied area,
Yeah.
and we traveled to Bordeaux. And that's where my mother was looking for the bus line that would cross over.
Right.
And this is where we went. In other
Well,
words,
it's so close, right? How long a bus ride
about
would that-
50 miles.
Yeah, my God.
50 miles from the border.
Yeah, wow.
And so that's where the checkpoint happened, and
And the lackadaisical German.
and we were lucky to be able to get.
Yeah.
And from there we went to Sète, which is this little town over here.
Right.
Okay, and that's where I went to first grade,
Yeah.
and where I got this letter from Marshal Pétain.
Oh, yeah, you haven't shown that yet.
Yeah,
You haven't shown him that yet.
and I can show it to.
He got a letter, personal letter, from the head of the Vichy government, the fascists.
Yeah, that's I
The
mentioned
head
that.
of the fascist movement in France. He got a personal letter.
Yeah, there's the letter. Mon enfant means my child. Your drawing has pleased me. You have made it with a care that shows that you have taste for this type of work. I congratulate you. Continue. Philippe Pétain.
Paradoxes. Yeah.
And here
Pedro,
is,
all these paradoxes, right?
here is a picture of that first grade, and here I am.
Wait a minute, that's in Ecuador? No,
That
that's
was-
in France.
That was in Sète.
In Sète, yeah,
Where
right.
Pétain
Right.
said,
Well, that's you. Okay.
that's myself.
Okay. All right. Look at those kids. Yeah.
And my parents,
Right there. I figured that.
this is my parents.
Yeah.
This was taken in Paris.
And how old would they have been, do you think?
Well, this must have been when they were in their 30s.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Your mother was beautiful.
Yeah. Yes.
And my grandmother, who was a opera singer,
Oh, she
Was-
was? Oh, and that's why she ended up
in
marrying.
Paris.
Yeah, and she married the guy who was the
the
conductor.
musician, yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Let's see if I find something else here. And this is the conductor at the Paris Opera, my step-grandfather.
Right.
This is my grandmother and myself when I was about four years old.
Oh, you're playing the piano.
And this is the conductor again.
You are playing the piano.
Yeah, well, she was teaching me. I never learned it. And this is my father, myself, and this is my
Uncle?
my grandfather, my mother's father.
Father, yeah.
And he was he had been a very well-to-do person in Berlin.
Yeah.
He was in the real estate business. Very, they had chauffeurs and cooks.
Really?
And,
Yeah. All right, their fedoras are a little bit similar to mine.
yes. This is when we were in Chateaubriand, and my parents had, my mother had given me
Yeah.
this outfit.
To wear. And there's a ship that I saw way on the right.
Yep.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, and here is the ship with which we left. This is the Spanish line ship that took us to South America.
Yeah.
And there was this, I don't know if I mentioned it to you last time, we were stopped in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean by an Allied convoy
Yeah, you did say that, but
Yeah.
tell me again.
And the ship was boarded, and my father gave information about industrial centers in Germany, which
wow.
were probably later on bombarded by the Allies.
So they stopped you guys because
Yeah, well,
they wanted to make sure
because Spain was, you know,
Oh,
suspect.
right. Yeah, that's right.
And they actually took off several people from there
Right.
as spies. As
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, Cape of Good Hope is what's that around?
what's that?
Is that the Cabo de Cape of
the name of
Oh,
the ship.
Okay. I was thinking that was the name of where you guys had
No,
gone.
it's a ship. The name of the ship.
It's a pretty famous. It's a pretty beautiful ship.
Well, it was, yeah, except that we had to be down here at the bottom.
At the bottom, that's right.
That's
Of where you got
this
to.
is the trip,
Oh, to Venezuela.
starting from Madrid in Spain.
Yeah.
Then we embarked in Cadiz, which is this, you know, a port in Spain.
Oh, that's not part of Portugal? Oh, no, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's explained here.
Yeah, right.
And here we were had the encounter with the
Allied.
convoy,
Yeah.
and we had another encounter here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we went by the island of Trinidad.
Oh, wait a minute.
Trinidad.
Yeah, where's that one?
Number 3 is Trinidad.
There it is. Okay.
And then we stopped in Venezuela.
Yeah,
in Puerto Cabello. Do you know Puerto Cabello?
You do? And then you went to Curacao, where I've been to Curacao.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And from Curacao, it went along and went to Brazil. And we stopped
wow.
at several places in Brazil,
Whoa.
in Montevideo in Uruguay.
Okay.
And then the ship ended up in
Valparaiso.
Buenos Aires
Okay.
here.
Wow.
And from here, we took a train across. And then we stopped in Mendoza.
Right.
And then
Valparaiso.
Valparaiso. Then the ship went along the coast.
The same ship that you had been on?
No, this was a different ship.
Okay.
And we stopped in Callao in Peru,
And they went
Guayaquil,
Guayaquil.
and finally Quito.
Quito. Wow. Wow.
It's a long trip.
Yeah, because
It would have been
I know.
it would have been a hell of a lot shorter if we could have gone through the Panama Canal,
Oh, right.
because
right.
you know that would have been
Well, the Panama Canal existed
was close to navigation, to commercial navigation
during that time.
during the World
Okay,
World War
I didn't know
II.
that. Okay. Wow. This is great. Yeah, you care about this, man. You do care about this country.
Yep.
Yeah, I grew up in Maryland originally.
I see.
Yeah. Which is still, I mean, it's still the Northeast.
Yeah.
It's the northern state.
is.
Yeah.
That the only 2 countries that were accepting immigrants in the Western Hemisphere were Paraguay and Ecuador.
Got it. What's the presumption?
But then after the war, all those ones
Argentina
Nazis.
accepted only
they're Nazis.
the Nazis and fascists.
Yeah. you know about that,
But
right?
there is a huge Jewish community there.
And-
Yeah, but
in
they
Argentina.
had come
Before
much
or
before,
after?
yes.
Before. Oh.
Yes,
Yeah.
much before.
Wow.
And Chile too, there were quite a lot.
Quite a lot of Jews in Chile. Yeah.
But Ecuador was an accept. They were very happy to accept.
Were there Jews in Quito?
Yeah, not too many, 500.
500. Yeah.
Not that
Wow.
much.
Not many.
Wow. You know, Pedro, I've really enjoyed this
Oh,
a lot.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll show you, of course, when we put it together.